Beruchim haboim. Welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together on Daf Mem Vav Amud Aleph, starting with Mem Hey Amud Beis, 10 lines from the bottom. The Gemara brings back a previous statement, Omar Mar. B'yomtiv harei hen keraglei kol adam. When the rain falls on Yontif, the Brisa states, then it has keraglei b'nei adam. Dahainu, a person who comes and is koine the rainwater, then it will have the same techum as that person who was koine the water. Ask the Gemara, Vamai likni shvisa b'ukainus. Let us say that it is koine shvisa from the ocean. And therefore, since it's koine shvisa from the ocean, then we say that it's going to only have Daled Amos. Since it was koine shvisa from the ocean, and it's much further, 2,000 Amos away from that ocean now, therefore it's left with only Daled Amos. So why is it keraglei kol adam? Asked the Gemara. Leima deloik Rabbi Eliezer. Let us suggest not like Rabbi Eliezer. The ik Rabbi Eliezer ha'omar kol ha'olam kulo mimei ukainus hu shoyse. That a person, wherever he is in the world, is drinking water from the ocean. Omar Rabbi Yitzchak hacha be'ovin shniskashum erev yontif askin. He says, Rabbi Yitzchak, that here we're talking about where the clouds were gathered on Erev Yontif, and therefore, since they were gathered on Erev Yontif, we cannot say that it's coming from the ocean because they are already gathered up in the clouds, and therefore we can suggest that indeed it's keraglei b'nei adam. Vidilma asked the Gemara, Hanoch azli v'hanech achrini ninu. Perhaps these clouds are different clouds. Those clouds are already dissipated, and now these are new clouds, and therefore, back to the question before, that the water that is raining is coming from the Ukainus. Answers the Gemara, we're talking about where there is recognizable that these are indeed the clouds, the very clouds that had formed even on Erev Yontif. And therefore, yes, it could be Keraglei b'nei Adam. V'bois Eima. Alternatively, you can say, Have a Sfeika Divrayim. This is a Safek Midirabanan. The Safek Divrayim Lahokil. And we say, when it comes to Safek Midirabanan Lahokil. And therefore, since we don't know if indeed these are the very clouds or not, we can rely on the fact that to say that we're Mekil. And therefore, again, you can be saying that there's a Kinyan Shvisa of those who are Raglei Adam. Ask the Gemara a new question, though. However, Velikni Shvisa ba'avim. Say that the shvisa is kind of in the avim, in the clouds themselves. And therefore, shuv. The Gemara is asking a question over here. How can you say it's keraglei b'nei adam? It should only be Daled Amos. Answers Gemara tifshut minei, and ask Gemara further rather. Tifshut mino, de'ein tchumin l'mala me'asara. Maybe you can then prove from here that since we do not say it was koine from the clouds, and therefore a person is able to then be koine the rainwater, and it's going to be going according to his techum, because you don't make a shvisa from something above asara tvachim. And since this is above asara tvachim, therefore, like we had a discussion before, it must be that there is no tchum above asara tvachim. That was a question before, and we can push it to shaila from here. Because if there was tchumim above asar tvachim, then we should then be pushed from here that you can just have shvisa. Must be that there is none. La'olam, says the Gemara, ema loch yesh tchumim. There is indeed tchumim even above asar tvachim. Umaya be'iva mivle b'loi. But the water that's inside the clouds, they become something that is diffused in the clouds. And therefore, that's why over here it's not koine, but above asar tzvachim you can still maintain, does have tchumim. On top of Mem Vav and Aleph, Kol Shekin asked the Gemara, if that's the case, that this water has become, let's say, part of, it's no longer, it has become gas, and it's lost, it's become diffused, and only afterwards develops into water, then ask the Gemara, Kol Shekain Dahavlu Noile the Asiri. Then Kol Shekain, this is something that you cannot metaltel. If it rains, therefore it's Noilad. It was something that was not here before Yom Tif, and therefore it's a new entity. which means it's muktzah. You cannot metatal it whatsoever. Elo Maya answers Gemara ba'ovin minad naidi. We're going back and say that indeed we're not going to say that the water is mivla bloy in the clouds, but rather the reason why it's not koine shvisa in the clouds is because the clouds, it's moving in the clouds constantly, and therefore it doesn't able to be koine shvisa. The Gemara now says, if that's the case, hashida osis lohachi ukainus nami lo likshu loch. Then, if we're going to say that, we can also then go back to that which we said in regards to the ocean, and say that the ocean also, we can say the same thing. It's not a kasha. Mai bukainus nami minad naidi. The waters in the ocean are constantly moving, whereby it's not kind of shvisa. V'tanya naharos hamoishchin umayanos hanoivim. Waters that are rushing and well springs that are gushing forward. Harei hein keraglei kol adam. They have the status of keraglei kol adam. In other words, we see this principle that they're not koine shvisa on loan. Only when somebody is acquiring them, then they get the tchum of the person who is acquiring the raglei adam. Says the Gemara weiter, Omar Rabbi Yaakov Bar Idi Omar Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi Halacha ke Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. The halacha indeed is like Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. Omar le Rabbi Zeira Rabbi Yaakov Bar Idi B'shfeirush shmiyali loch or michlal shmiyaloch. Is this befeirush that you heard that the halacha is indeed like Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, or what did you then derive it from something that you heard? Omar le, he said back to him, befeirush shmiyali. I heard it befeirush, him saying Rabbi Yochanan ben Levi that the halacha is like Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. Umay klala, what would be the principle that he would have ascertained that Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri held this way? The Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, because Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi said, "Halacha kedivrei hamekil be'eruv." He made a statement that halacha is like the mekilin by eruv. That's what we could have then derived that he meant when he said, therefore, that since the halacha is like mekil and eruv, then we can derive from that the halacha is like Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, who's mekil over here, and says that the person who is sleeping gets 2,000 amos in all directions. And says the Gemara, V'tarta lamali, why would need two statements Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi made? The first statement is that the halacha is like Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, and the second statement being that the halacha is like divrei hamekil in regards to eruv. Omar Rabbi Zeira tzrichi. Rabbi Zeira said we need both of these statements. Di ashma in halach Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. If he would just say the first statement that Allah is like Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, hava mina bein lekula bein lechumra, I might think that's true, not only lekula but also lechumra. Kamash malan halach Rabbi kedivrei hamekil be'eruv. Therefore, he had to make the second statement. Allah is like Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. Not only that, but also Allah is like the one, like when it comes to the kula in Eruvin, to know that the halach is like Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, dafka lekula. So why not just say then the halacha is like the one who is mekil be'eruv? Halacha ki Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri lamali. Why do we need that statement? Answer the Gemara istrich, because salka daitechamino hani mili yachid b'makom yachid v'rabim b'makom rabim. When you have a yachid who's arguing with a yachid or rabbim against a rabbim, then the halacha is like Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. Aval Yachid b'makom rabim emaloi. But here, when it's Yachid against the rabbim, the halacha is not like Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. And that's like the case in our Mishnah, because he's arguing against the Chachamim. Omar le Rava le Abaye. So we need both statements that Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi made. Aleph, the halacha is like Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, and Beis, that the halacha is like Divrei HaMekel and Eruvin. Says the Gemara, Omar le Rava le Abaye michti. Is this so? Eruvin derabon mali yachid b'makom yachid mali yachid b'makom rabim. Rava asks, he challenges Abaye, he says, what's the difference whether it's yachid against the yachid or yachid against the rabim in regards to Eruvin? Omar le Rav Papa. Now Rav Papa comes to explain, proves why it do indeed see the difference when the yachid is arguing against the rabbim. He says, Rav Papa le Rava, Kidirabonon loishanilon bein yachid b'makom yachid yachid b'makom rabbi. You are going to say that there's no distinction between yachid arguing on yachid and a yachid arguing on a rabbi. There is a distinction as follows. Vatnan, it states in the Mishnah. Rabbi Elazar Omer Kol Isha She'avru Aleo Sholosh Oinois Daya Shaitza. When a woman did not see a vest, did not see menstruation in 3 30-day periods, 90 days. So according to the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer over here, it states that we don't have to be concerned that 24 hours before she touched an object, it became tamei, that maybe when she menstruated, it was already from 24 hours before. That's his shita. The Chacham argue on that, and they say, no, that's only true when it comes to a zikena, an elderly lady. Then we say that she loses that status, and therefore, if she did, then can come in contact with something, we can say 24 hours before was not tamei. But in a regular situation, a young woman who hasn't menstruated in 90 days, then we will not say that. We'll say that if she touched an object, and that object she was metameh within 24 hours before. Vitanya states, Maise v'osa Rebbe ki Rebbe Eliezer. And there's a Maise that Rebbe taught like Rebbe Eliezer. La'acha shenizkar. After, over here, after then it was remembered. Omar, he said, Kedaihu Rabbi Eliezer l'smoich Allah b'shas edechak. He's worthwhile to rely upon on a situation that is a emergency situation. So ask the Gemara to then explain its position. My la'acha shenizkar. What did the Brisa mean that he stated that it's kedai to rely on Rabbi Eliezer in a shas hadechak? What does that mean? Because after he remembered what? If it's because he then remembered that halakha is not like Rabbi Eliezer, then it's very good. No. Again, if you want to say, however, that after he remembered, he realized that halakha is not like Rabbi Eliezer, rather like the Chachamim. Then how could he then change and say b'shas hadechak, then go like Rabbi Eliezer? If the halacha is not like Rabbi Eliezer emphatically, it's rather like the Chachamim, then just because it's b'shas hadechak, you can't go ahead and then paskin like Rabbi Eliezer. So if that's going to say like that, that's what he meant, acha shenizkar, that doesn't make sense. Elo, the Gemara now proves, rather that he did not state that the halacha is like one or the other. It's not clear like one or the other. And now when it's shas hadechak, he can go like Rabbi Eliezer. La'acha shenizkar, after remembered, the lav yachid polig alea, elo rabim polig alea. Omar kedayu Rabbi Eliezer lismach ala b'shas hadechak. Now, what was la'acha shenizkar? Even though he's arguing against the rabbim, but since the halacha is not set, over here will be mekil because of shas hadechak. What do we learn from this? We see from over here that in the normal situation, it's not shas hadechak, when it's yachid against the rabbim, we don't go like the yachid. So over here, we can prove not like Rava was saying, says Papa. Omara, mishashil l'Rava. Mishashil l'Rava, another proof that indeed it makes a difference that the rabbi, if the yachid is arguing with the rabbim or just the yachid. V'omar le Rav Nachman bar Yisrael l'Rava, or as Rav Nachman bar Yisrael who said to Rava, b'dirabonin lo shani ben yachid b'makom yachid ben yachid b'makom rabbi. Are you going to say there's no distinction between a yachid who argues on a yachid and a yachid who argues on a rabbim? V'hatani states in the Mishnah, in the Brisa, shmua kroiva noheg shiva. When one person hears chalila of a close family member who had passed away within kroiv, what's considered to be a shmua kroiva, then he has to be noheg shiva. Noheg shiva, in this case, referring to the fact that the avelus of not laundering one's clothes and not taking showers. Whereas a person who hears a shmua that one of his family members passed away, when there's a shmua rechoika, after a period of 30 days, he hears it, then according to this opinion, then he's only noheg only 1 day. He's only holding one day of the avelus. Ve'ezu kroiva ve'ezu rechoika. In other words, this Tanakama is very mekil. When it comes to a shmua, there's a difference between a shmua kroiva and a shmua rechoika. Ve'ezu kroiva ve'ezu rechoika. What's considered to be kroiva? What's considered rechoika? That he hears it kroiva and he hears it rechoika. B'toy shloshim kroiva lachar shloshim rechoika. If he hears within 30 days, it's considered to be a shmua kroiva, whereby he'll be noheg shiva and shloshim. If it's rechoika, then he will only be noheg 1 day of avelus. Now, there's the moment he hears, he'll take off his shoes, and that'll sit down, and then he'll get up, and that'll be the end of his avelus. So he's mekil. He makes a distinction between hearing it shmua kroiva, shmua rechoika. Those are the words of Rabbi Akiva. Whereas the Chachamim are machmir, and they say, when it comes to even a shmua rechoika, he'll be noheg both shiva and shloshim. Not only will be noeg shiva in terms of not taking showers and not having freshly laundered clothes, he'll also be noeg shloshim, that is that there's going to be no haircuts and also no ironing of the clothes. Whenever you see a machlok is a yachid and the rabbim, the halach is always like the rabbim, with the exception of this case that we just quoted now in regards to shmua kroiv and shmua rechoika. Even though Rabbi Akiva is mekil, he's a das yachid next to the rabbim, next against the chachamim who are machmir. Halach yedivrei Rabbi Akiva. Halach Rabbi Akiva. Why? Because over here by Avelus we are mekil. So we go like Rabbi Akiva against the rabbim, but that's only an exception to the rule. But in a regular situation, but there will be a distinction if it's a yachid against a yachid or yachid against a rabbim. And therefore, even in the drabanan, when the yachid is arguing against the rabbim, the halacha generally is like the rabbim, we would make a distinction. So therefore, it was necessary for Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi to state that halacha is aleph like Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, and beis halacha is lakula in regards to Eruvin.